Interpretation of Krittika Nakshatra. When the moon is placed in Krittika Nakshatra and influenced by benefics, the emotional tone becomes one of inner fire, responsibility, and purifying intensity. Ruled by the sun, Krittika lends sharpness, clarity, and a burning desire to protect and refine. A benefic moon here provides emotional strength, especially in caregiving roles or leadership. But if afflicted by Saturn or Ketu, emotional warmth may give way to rigidity or emotional burnout, and the native may carry deep-seated wounds linked to betrayal or harsh upbringing. Venus in Krittika intensifies desire and aesthetic standards. While this can result in beauty expressed through precise, perfectionist art or fashion, Venus's softness contrasts with Krittika's cutting nature. If Venus is conjoined with benefics like Jupiter, it fosters refined creativity with intense discernment. But when Venus is afflicted by Mars or Rahu, it may generate overcritical tendencies in love, sensual control issues, or cold passion masked as perfectionism, often causing relationship friction. Jupiter in Krittika offers philosophical purification and a desire to refine belief systems through bold action. This placement, when in a strong house or associated with benefics, creates educators or spiritual protectors, those who burn away ignorance. However, if Jupiter is afflicted or placed in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house, the individual may be dogmatic or overly judgmental, using spiritual authority to dominate rather than uplift, misapplying Krittika's power of purification. Mars, especially as the co-ruler of Aries, where Krittika begins, when placed in this nakshatra becomes a searing force of courage and will. Well placed, it gives the ability to fight for truth and destroy what is impure, often seen in warriors, surgeons, or reformers. However, afflicted Mars here becomes overly aggressive, cutting with words or actions. With Rahu or Saturn influence, the person may lack emotional sensitivity and resort to dominance rather than constructive correction. Saturn in Krittika acts like a slow, harsh teacher. When dignified or supported by benefics, it helps the native become a disciplined reformer or strategist who rebuilds systems after cutting away inefficiencies. But when placed in difficult houses or afflicted, Saturn's cold precision distorts Krittika's purification power into excessive harshness, inner repression, or emotional detachment. This can result in strained parental or authority relationships and difficulty receiving love. Rahu placed in Krittika pushes the native to over-identify with ideals of purification, strength, or perfection. It can drive ambition toward controlling environments or image. In a benefic-supported context, Rahu here produces charismatic reformers or bold leaders with razor-sharp vision. But when Rahu is afflicted or in Dushtana houses, it may cause psychological damage from self-criticism, imposter syndrome, or obsession with external validation, especially in career and relationships. Ketu in Krittika brings detachment from the need for approval or worldly adornments, often making the native austere or internally self-reliant. Spiritually, this fosters the role of a truth seeker, someone who seeks inner clarity. But if afflicted, this placement may produce cutting words, rejection issues, or emotional bluntness. Without benefic support, Ketu in Krittika may isolate the person emotionally, believing that emotional vulnerability is weakness. Mercury in Krittika gains an analytical, sharply intellectual edge. With Jupiter or Venus support, this Mercury excels in writing, critique, strategy, or teaching with precision. But under malefic influence, Mercury here can become caustic or emotionally disconnected, wielding words like weapons. This results in mental stress or argumentative tendencies. Properly placed in Kendra or Kona, Mercury in Krittika becomes a brilliant communicator capable of dissecting truth with clarity and impact. Interpretation of Krittika Nakshatra, house placement context. When the sun, the ruler of Krittika Nakshatra, is placed in a Kendra 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th, or Kona 1st, 5th, 9th, Krittika's sharp, purifying energy is directed with visible strength and constructive leadership. For instance, for a Leo ascendant, if the sun, ruling the 1st house, is placed in the 10th house, and the moon is in Krittika, the native becomes a powerful force in the public sphere, commanding authority with clear intent. Krittika's fire is used to remove corruption or inefficiency in systems, earning them respect for their precision and courage. If Venus is placed in Krittika and rules the 3rd and 10th houses, as in Capricorn ascendant, and Venus is positioned in the 9th house, Kona, the creative and aesthetic refinement of Krittika is channeled into higher wisdom, international ventures, or Dharmic expression. The person might use artistic or professional skills to teach, publish, or reform philosophical thought. Bharani's intense sensuality evolves in Krittika into refined expression and principled creativity when the planetary ruler occupies a trine. However, if the planetary lord of the Krittika-placed planet resides in a Dushtana house, 6th, 8th, or 12th, the Krittika's ability to purify may get internalized and painful. For example, if Mars rules 4th and 11th houses, for Scorpio ascendant, and is placed in the 6th house, and Jupiter is in Krittika, the native may experience conflict within organizations or face a crisis in belief systems. The 6th house diminishes Krittika's solar clarity and may lead to battles against corruption or moral ambiguity that affect the person's peace of mind. Suppose Saturn is in Krittika for Virgo ascendant, and it rules the 5th and 6th houses, but is placed in the 8th house. This doubles the weight of karma and restriction. Krittika's cutting energy, combined with Saturn's delay and the 8th house's hidden intensity, may bring deep inner pressure and painful transformation through loss, criticism, or ego collapse. Yet, if Saturn is in the 4th or 1st house, the sharp Saturnine strength may instead become disciplined willpower, especially in educational, parental, or healing roles. If Mercury is placed in Krittika and rules the 2nd and 5th houses, for Taurus ascendant, and is placed in the 1st house, the native becomes highly articulate, mentally sharp, and expressive with a cutting but magnetic tone. Krittika's edge is softened by Mercury's adaptability, making the individual a truth speaker or analytical writer. When Mercury is placed in a Kendra like this, Krittika becomes a powerful communicator, capable of revealing truths others avoid. Now consider Jupiter in Krittika for Pisces ascendant, ruling the 1st and 10th houses, but placed in the 12th. This placement may suggest a teacher or leader who works in isolation, perhaps in ashrams, foreign lands, or institutions, where Krittika's transformative fire is directed inward. The person may burn away their ego in pursuit of spiritual truth, but if unsupported, they may suffer disillusionment or moral confusion due to withdrawal from real-world engagement. If Rahu is in Krittika and the Sun, its Nakshatra lord, is placed in the 5th house, Akona, say for Aries ascendant, the person becomes an intense performer or creative force with a hunger for recognition. Krittika's flame merges with Rahu's obsession, and the 5th house gives a stage. This can produce a charismatic speaker, reformer, or controversial creator, one who thrives on impact and bold expression. The fire of Krittika burns brightest here through creativity or children-related pursuits. Finally, Ketu in Krittika for Cancer ascendant, with the sun placed in the 6th house, can manifest as spiritual battles, detachment from authority, or inner purging of the ego. Krittika's urge to purify merges with Ketu's karmic detachment, often creating internal austerity or past life residues tied to harshness. However, if the sun is in the 9th house, the same combination can lead to spiritual leadership or teaching roles with a focus on burning away falsehoods to uncover essential truth. The Tattva intimacy compatibility of Nakshatras, Uttara Ashada Nakshatra. Uttara Ashada Nakshatra is an air Tattva Nakshatra ruled by the sun, with the Vishwadevas, the universal principles of virtue, as its governing deities. When Venus is placed in Uttara Ashada, intimacy becomes dignified, principle-based, and emotionally reserved yet loyal. Venus here craves meaningful connection rooted in truth, mutual respect, and life purpose. As an air Tattva Nakshatra, it favors relational clarity, autonomy, and intellectual rapport. Emotional expression tends to be filtered through ideals and values, making Tattva compatibility vital to determine how intimacy is expressed and received. With Earth Tattva Nakshatras, Ashwini, Bharani, Krittika, Rohini, and Mrigashirsha, Venus in Uttarashada finds strong support. Earth provides sensual grounding and emotional consistency, helping air articulate love in tangible, actionable ways. These pairings often manifest as mature, purposeful relationships where affection builds over time and gains depth through shared responsibilities. However, Earth partners may occasionally desire more emotional presence or physical warmth than air consistently provides. When balanced, these unions foster dependable, long-term intimacy with a sense of stability and shared vision. In pairings with water Tattva Nakshatras, Pushya, Punarvasu, Ashlesha, Magha, and Purva Phalguni, Venus in Uttara Ashada encounters emotional contrast. Water seeks deep bonding, emotional sensitivity, and relational flow, while air prefers rational processing, space, and order. These mismatched tempos can cause intimacy strain. The water partner may perceive Uttara Ashada as emotionally distant or overly focused on ethics rather than emotional responsiveness. Unless other planetary placements offer emotional bridging, such as strong Moon Venus or Moon Jupiter links, intimacy often remains lopsided or misunderstood. With other air tattvashta, Mula, Purva Ashada, and Shravana, Venus in Uttara Ashada flourishes in shared ideals, mental compatibility, and relational freedom. These relationships are light, communicative, and principled. Intimacy is often expressed through discussion, shared causes, or philosophical alignment rather than overt emotional demonstration. While these pairings provide intellectual stimulation and mutual understanding, they can lack emotional vulnerability unless water signs or planets bring softness and emotional depth into the chart. Fire Tattva Nakshatras, Chitra, Swaka, Anuradha, and Uttara Phalguni, create elemental synergy with air, leading to passionate, driven, and expressive intimacy. Fire inspires air, while air gives fire focus and adaptability. Venus in Uttara Ashada feels energized by fire nakshatras' expressive warmth and enthusiasm. These relationships are marked by shared growth, vision, and an open-hearted yet structured flow of affection. Care must be taken to prevent idealism from turning into relational rigidity or over-expectation. With ether tattva nakshatras, Ravati, Shatabisha, Danishta, Purva Bhadrapada, and Uttara Bhadrapada, Venus in Uttara Ashada accesses karmic and spiritual layers of intimacy. Ether allows air to expand beyond boundaries and process emotions through intuitive and universal frameworks. These pairings tend to be emotionally subtle yet psychically bonded. Intimacy here is soulful, dignified, and often guided by spiritual values or dharmic contracts. These relationships offer long-lasting interconnection that transcends external forms. Among all elements, water remains the most challenging for Venus in Uttara Ashada. Water seeks immersive emotional bonding, while air, especially here under solar rulership, upholds boundaries, duty, and rational detachment. Intimacy can feel misaligned, with water yearning for surrender and air requiring emotional clarity. These relationships can feel emotionally strained or unreciprocated unless supported by deeper moon-based synastry. Venus in Uttara Ashada finds natural harmony with fire nakshatras that bring passion and vitality, air nakshatras that foster clarity and equality, and ether nakshatras that introduce a spiritual dimension. Earth nakshatras bring tangible support and reliability, while water often challenges this placement's structured and somewhat idealized view of intimacy. For love to be sustaining, Venus in Uttara Ashada must feel respected, allowed to remain principled, and gently encouraged into deeper emotional presence. The tattva intimacy compatibility of nakshatras, Uttara Phalguni Nakshatra. Uttara Phalguni Nakshatra belongs to the fire tattva and is ruled by the sun, with Aryaman, the deity of noble contracts and companionship, as its presiding force. When Venus is placed in Uttara Phalguni, intimacy expresses as warm, committed, and purpose-driven affection. Venus here merges passion with responsibility, seeking partnerships that are emotionally fulfilling, but also built on respect, mutual support, and long-term growth. As a fire tattva nakshatra, it brings assertiveness and clarity in intimacy, but the outcome depends on how fire interacts with the other tattvas in a partner's chart. With earth tattva nakshatras, Ashwini, Bharani, Krittika, Rohini, and Mrigashirsha, Venus in Uttara Phalguni finds balance and sensual containment. Earth supports fire by grounding its enthusiasm and channeling its intensity into consistent action. These unions create stable and practical intimacy, where desire is met with loyalty and emotional steadiness. However, if the earth partner becomes too passive or routine-bound, fire's need for dynamic connection may feel suppressed. Still, earth is among the more supportive elements for fire in long-term emotional and physical bonding. With water tattva nakshatras, Pushya, Punarvasu, Ashlesha, Magha, and Purva Phalguni, Venus in Uttara Phalguni may encounter elemental tension. Water's emotional sensitivity can feel overwhelming or even restrictive to fire's direct, self-driven nature. Venus here wants emotional loyalty but expresses it through strength, not vulnerability, something water often demands. Intimacy can become strained if fire's assertiveness is perceived as insensitivity or if water withdraws due to emotional overload. These pairings may lead to emotional misalignment unless other planets bridge the emotional gaps. Pairing with other fire tattvas, Chitra, Swati, Vishaka, and Anuradha, results in mutual passion, drive, and quick bonding. Venus in Uttara Phalguni feels alive and inspired in these relationships. Intimacy becomes expressive, goal-oriented, and charged with mutual desire to grow or lead together. However, without emotional grounding, the union may become competitive or burn too quickly. There's potential for strong chemistry, but also ego clashes or dominance struggles if not balanced by softer planetary placements. Air Tattva Nakshatras, Mula Jyeshta Shravana, Purva Ashada, and Uttara Ashada form a highly cooperative elemental match with fire. Venus in Uttara Phalguni finds resonance in air's mental stimulation, lightness, and flexibility. These unions thrive on communication, shared ideals, and freedom within closeness. Intimacy becomes mentally engaging and emotionally liberating. However, both elements may struggle with deeper emotional vulnerability. While the relationship flows easily, it may lack the emotional anchoring that water or earth provide, unless moon or ascendant linkages introduce depth. With ether tattva nakshatras, Revati, Shatabisha, Dhanishta, Purva and Uttara, Venus in Uttara Phalguni experiences elevated connection. Ether's universal openness softens fire's intensity and helps shift the relationship into higher emotional and spiritual dimensions. These pairings often lead to purpose-driven or karmic unions, where intimacy is tied to growth, healing, and shared Dharma. Venus here feels recognized for its values and loyalty, finding in ether a space where passion meets transcendence. The most challenging pairings for Venus in Uttara Phalguni arise with water tattvas. Fire can scorch water's emotional field, while water may try to suppress fire's self-expression through emotional pressure. This leads to power imbalances in intimacy, where either emotional withdrawal or aggressive assertion becomes dominant. Over time, the connection may feel draining unless other chart factors support empathy, regulation, or mutual respect. For deep and fulfilling intimacy, Venus in Uttara Phalguni works well with earth tattvas that provide steadiness and physical affection, air tattvas that offer stimulation and flexibility, and ether tattvas that elevate the bond to soul-level intimacy. Fire nakshatras offer strong passion but must be managed mindfully. Water tattvas often test this placement's ability to remain emotionally present, making tattva alignment key for building intimacy that balances love, loyalty, and shared direction.